Hey guys, happy Friday. In this video, I'm going to give you a quick recap of Cinemark Q2 2025 earnings. Cinemark currently trading at $25.87. I do have a position in Cinemark. You can see the demand zone I have marked here around the $23 range, supply zone around $33, $34, and I have a 12-month price target for Cinemark of $36. Down here in the bottom left is my buy back in February on Cinemark at $26.60, a little bit higher actually than today's price. I'm just going to sit tight on my position, and if it were to stay in the red for any point in time in the rest of Q3, let's say in August or September, if I get an opportunity to add around $23 or $24, that would be my plan, and then hold it to see if it hits my expected 12-month price target of $36. In terms of upside on that, if it were to hit $36, that is a 39% upside for Cinemark. Profitable company, and as long as the movie industry keeps growing like we're expecting, a relatively safe bet. There are a couple of yellow items here on the dashboard though that you should be aware of. Let's just focus on those. Cinemark does have pretty high debt to equity ratio of 7.75. Working capital, I have it flagged in red because it is lower than 1. The revenue growth rate is in yellow at 8%. When we compare that to something like a IMAX, which has a 17% revenue growth rate, Cinemark's gonna hit some maximum capacity, which will be a ceiling on their revenue for the next year or two. So 12-month revenue forecast, about 8%. That's not bad, but in order to get a green on this box, it would need to be over 10%. There is some convertible bonds here in the dilution risk box that we're looking at. $460 million worth of convertible bonds due August 15th. That is just 2 weeks away. And if you're curious, if you're following GameStop or just curious about convertible bond hedging, remember I talk to you guys often about how the bondholders will go short the stock to hedge their bond position, and that bonds don't typically get converted until very close to maturity. These Cinemark bonds are trading at 2x par value, twice the conversion price, and nobody has converted yet. Let me repeat that. Nobody has converted, even though they're trading at 2x the conversion price, and the bonds out in the market are selling at 2x par value. So if you're looking at AMC convertible bonds or GameStop convertible bonds, I want you to keep that in mind. This is just how convertible bond hedging works, and convertible bond holders typically do not convert their bonds until very close to maturity. Because of that convertible bond hedging, even though Cinemark is profitable, they do have a high short interest, and that is 20.55%. You can see the short interest being the gray area part of this chart. So then maybe by next quarter, when we look at Q3, this will be a green box for dilution risk, and I think the short interest, you can expect to see that go down once all the bonds are converted here in 2 weeks, and that box will probably flip green next quarter also. Cinemark does pay a dividend since they have excess cash. They reinstated the dividend, and that is 32 cents a year. With that as our framework, let's talk about Cinemark's Q2 results. One thing that is different about Cinemark than some of its competitors, if this is your first time here, Cinemark operates in the US and Latin America. So their international footprint is in Latin America. 304 theaters in the US, 4,249 screens, and in Latin America, 193 theaters, 1,398 screens. A couple of highlights from the financials that Cinemark wants you to know about. They start off talking about box office performance, Cinemark's percent of domestic box office recovery relative to pre-pandemic levels, surpassed North American industry by more than 1,000 basis points. International admissions surpassed respective Latin American industry benchmarks by 400 basis points. They have this Cinemark XD and D-Box premium format, and they let us know that Cinemark achieved the second highest grossing XD premium large format box office quarter of all time in Q2 2025. On 5% of global screens, XD represented 13% of Cinemark's global box office. Food and beverage, they say that they reported record-breaking food and beverage per cap, both domestically and internationally, with domestic food and beverage per cap surpassing the $8 milestone for the first time, coming in at $8.34. In terms of their membership programs, they have what they call Movie Club. The membership is now at 1.45 million, growing 12% year over year and 50% since 2019, representing 30% of domestic Q2 box office. Domestically, loyalty members, including free and paid programs, represented more than 55% of the company's Q2 2025 box office. And finally, maybe the thing we care about the most, the profitability. The company reported second quarter total revenue of $941 million. That is one of their highest quarters ever. I think the top three probably since 2019. They go on to call it a 28% increase year over year, with our highest quarterly domestic revenue. The company generated the highest quarterly adjusted EBITDA and adjusted EBITDA margin post-pandemic, with $232 million of adjusted EBITDA and 24.7% in margin, respectively. Additionally, the company delivered the second highest quarterly adjusted EBITDA in the company's history. Cash flow, they generated $276 million in cash from operating activities and $246 million of free cash flow. In terms of the balance sheet and debt, let's just talk about that real quick, because there are going to be some changes coming up here on Cinemark with the convertible debt maturing on August 15th. They have been dropping their total long-term debt. It is right now around $2.2 billion. On the bullet points to the right here, they highlight that they repriced their term loan during Q2 2025, reducing the interest rate by 50 basis points, resulting in $3.2 million of annual cash interest savings. Limited exposure to interest rate fluctuations, as 90% of the debt is fixed. They ended Q2 with a strong cash balance of $932 million. And from that cash, they are committing to repay the $460 million of principal amount of convertible notes due August 15th, 2025, about 2 weeks away. Once those convertible notes are taken care of, then their next really big bucket of debt does not hit until 2028. In terms of capital allocation, as we just mentioned, they're going to be repaying $460 million principal amount on the convertible notes. The company repurchased $200 million of stock in March of 2025 to proactively mitigate potential dilution from warrants. And they say in bullet point number 2 here that they continue to actively pursue strategically and financially accretive investments to grow and secure the company's long-term success. Bullet point number 3, highlighting that 32-cent dividend annually that Cinemark recently reinstated. Drilling down into a little more detail about what is going to happen with the convertible notes, the company is, as I said, planning to use cash to address the principal amount. They do have a call spread to protect the company and investors from stock price movements up to $22. And they say here that they intend to settle exposure above principal in shares. So we got the convertible notes being paid off partly in cash and partly in shares. Looking at a couple of high-level things from the financial statements, we can see that the Q2 2025 revenue came in at $940 million. And just looking back over the last 5 or 6 years or so, you can see that last bar on the right is as high as just about any that they've had in terms of record quarters. It looks like the closest that they had before that was $920 million in Q3 of 2024. And then we had $942 million Q2 of 2023. Operating income, a positive $175 million. Net income for the quarter came in at $93.5 million, a very nice result. That gave them a diluted earnings per share of 63 cents per share, a slight miss off of analyst forecast, which depending on who you are listening to, analysts had been forecasting between 70 and 74 cents per share for Cinemark. Free cash flow for the quarter, $245 million. That brings them for the first half of 2025 to a total positive free cash flow of just over $100 million. Moving over to the cash flow statement so we can talk about CapEx for just 1 second. We can see that in the first half of 2025, Cinemark has spent just over $50 million in CapEx. They reiterated on the earnings call today that their plan is to spend $225 million during the full year. So they have quite a bit of CapEx spend coming up in the next 2 quarters. And looking at Q3 versus Q4, I'm going to guess that that will mostly be weighted spent in Q4 of 2025. The biggest complaint I hear out on social media regarding Cinemark is how is their price so high compared to something like AMC, which is trading closer to $3. You cannot just compare stock prices. You got to dig a little bit deeper, understand the financial statements and the financial ratios that the market is using to value these 2 companies. Cinemark is profitable. They have an actual PE ratio, a PE of 13.45. Compared to AMC, who is not profitable. They don't have a PE ratio. So that's already a mark against AMC until the box office grows enough for the company to be profitable. The other things that we look at on Cinemark, EV to EBITDA ratio of 8.88. When you look at AMC, 33, way too high. Next thing, debt to equity ratio for Cinemark, 7.57. For AMC, the debt to equity ratio is a negative, not good, negative 4.78. Cinemark return on equity, 93%, return on assets, 9%, return on invested capital, 11.3%. How does AMC look on those? All negative numbers. So look, you just can't do an apples to apples comparison of Cinemark and AMC. I know there are YouTubers who want to talk to you about price to sales ratio and what AMC is going to be worth one day. Maybe one day, but the company has to get profitable and they need to fix the balance sheet. AMC does. You just can't look at the price to sales ratio of Cinemark and say AMC should be worth that. Maybe one day, but they've got other more serious problems that they need to go fix. If you guys have any questions or comments about the Cinemark Q2 results, please leave them for me in the comments down below. Thank you for watching all the way through. I am Tony Denaro, and I will see ya on the next video.